Welcome to the Opera House Story Sessions. On this episode, we will feature Mary Sue Burns.
So my music story starts way back when I was very small because I come from a very musical family. However, they didn't have a clue about old-time music or even bluegrass, so there's that. But they were also very supportive. So I started out, and I only mention this because it comes back into my story later. When I was about 7, my mother decided that I should take piano lessons at the music school settlement. And if you took piano lessons there, you had to also take a music theory class. And I didn't really like that music theory class much, and I didn't really practice for my piano lessons much, but somewhere along the line, it came back around because recently in a jam, when I hear somebody yelling out, no, that's the 5 chord, stay on the 5 chord a little longer, I know exactly what they're talking about because of that music theory class way back when. So I mention that only because it came back in there. The other thing that happened in my childhood was that my elementary music teacher decided that he wanted to start a little orchestra. Well, in order to do that, he had to have some kids that could play some instruments. So he had a little violin class, which I joined. And there were about 5 or 6 of us that learned to play a little bit on the violin so that we could play in his orchestra. And I remember taking my little violin and holding it in one hand and riding my bicycle to get to the other school district where the practice was for the little orchestra. But then in 6th grade, my family moved, and that violin went in the closet. Comes back later in the story, though. So just to continue, the first time I really heard old-time music was at Oberlin College. And my very first semester at Oberlin College, I went to a concert sponsored by the folk music club there, and it was the Highwood String Band. And I heard the Highwood String Band, and I just, in my mind, I said, I like that, I want to do that. And so very soon after that, I started learning to play the banjo, and I'll play you one of my early tunes from that era. This is Rockingham Cindy. So at Oberlin, I was technically studying biology, but I probably put just as much effort into trying to learn to play the banjo. And I ran into some folks there, mainly because of the Oberlin Folk Music Club, that have gone on to be quite eminent in the old-time music world. One of them was David Winston, who's a very good banjo player. Another was Brad Leftwich, who's mainly known for his fiddling, but also a good banjo player. Lisa Ornstein, that went on to play in a French-Canadian band and is now pretty active in the West Coast scene in old-time music. And so it was an environment that was pretty rich with old-time music. There's also some friends that were in a bluegrass band. And, we would tease each other about our music, whatnot, but we were all friends. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Oberlin College. It's pretty famous because it's associated with a conservatory of music. And the conservatory of music is mainly classical music, of course, although they do have a jazz component now, but the whole environment is very, very supportive of all different kinds of music. I mean, if you wanted to learn to play in a Javanese gamelan orchestra, you could do it. If you wanted to play in a medieval madrigal group, you could do it. In fact, I think Brad played lute in that madrigal group. But anyway, very supportive. There was music all over the place, all different kinds. Those of us that lean toward old time would sponsor our own square dances and things, and it went from there. Well, a couple of those folks, specifically David Winston and Brad Leftwich, ended up graduating and moving to Lexington, Virginia. And Lexington, Virginia in the late 70s was kind of a hotbed of old-time music. And a lot of us that were still at Oberlin would go like spring break or maybe in the summer, or particularly at New Year's time to play music down there. And a fellow that was quite influential in that scene was a geology professor at WNL, Odell McGuire. And the next tune I'm going to play comes from that Lexington era, and I always think of Odell when I play this tune. So it's called Going Uptown. So in Lexington, one of the big traditions there is breaking up Christmas. And this is an old tradition from the Appalachians where the folks would get together at the end of Christmas, and they would more or less party from Christmas until New Year's and kind of end with New Year's Eve. And the folks in Lexington decided that that was a good tradition to revive and carry on, and so they did that, although they didn't do the whole 12 days of Christmas. They only could manage about 3. And so a bunch of us would go down to go play music there, and I happened to meet this guy named Mike Burns when I was down there. And so anyway, he was a pretty good fiddler at the time, and I found out later also a pretty good banjo player. I'm going to play one more from that time that I remember. This was one that was pretty popular around that time. And then I'm going to ask Mike to play a couple with me. This is called Rock the Cradle Joe. I should probably say something about my style of playing because it's not really, it's not very true to West Virginia style. Probably the influences that I have, starting at Oberlin from my friends Brad and David, but also from the Lexington influence. There was a lot of influence from that northwestern corner of North Carolina, and definitely more into the dance music, and so I play with, hopefully with a lot of rhythm, and sometimes I don't feel compelled to play every single note that's in the tune. That's the fiddle's job, but I think that the banjo's kind of like a bridge between the guitar players and the fiddlers, and so you have some melody, but the main thing is that you're kind of the heartbeat of a jam. So when I play, a lot of times you might hear this chucking sound, and it's kind of a good and bad thing because I've had friends of mine say, "How do you do that chucking sound?" Because it's kind of that, I don't know, when I want to do it, it doesn't happen. But anyway, they say, "How do you do that?" And the only way I could figure out how it happened was to try not to do it, which then, of course, the notes sound better and you can hear more of what the melody is, but I'm so used to playing with other people that I'm just really more focused on that rhythm part. In fact, this is kind of odd for me because I'm playing by myself, and really the only times I play by myself are if I'm learning a tune or I can't get anybody else to play with me. So this is an odd thing for me. Okay, so having said that, I'd like Mike to play a few with me, so we want to switch. So I wanted to say a word about these instruments that we have here. So back when I was in elementary school and trying to learn to play the violin, a friend of my parents found out that I was trying to do that and gave me a very nice 1952 Roth violin. And that's the one that ended up, when we moved away from that town, it ended up in my closet for quite a long time. And then when I got interested in old-time music, I thought, violin, that could be a fiddle. And I dug it back out and played a little bit on it briefly. But you see who has it now. Mike really liked it, and that's been his number one fiddle for the last
had to get married
44 years or so, right? But it's a good trade-off because this banjo neck was made by Mike Burns. It's an old tubaphone pot, but he made the neck for me, and I think I have the only banjo in the world that is inlaid with Paleozoic invertebrates. So there is that, right? So I wanted Mike to come up and play a few with me because, like I said, I'm primarily, I like to jam and I like to play with a band. So after a while, we had a long hiatus of probably 25 years when we only played for the Minnehaha Braves Cakewalk and the WVMR fundraisers, and that was it. So twice a year figure that we played for about 25 years. People wonder why, and I think it's just, we had real jobs, we had kids, they played soccer, it was crazy. So finally, after that time, we got back into that and got back into going to festivals, and the tunes that we're going to play are really festival tunes, and the first one is Crook Brothers Breakdown, and I learned this tune from my friend Kathleen O'Connell, who's a fiddler from near Blacksburg, and Mike isn't sure where he learned it, but I made him learn it because I liked it, and it's a festival tune. We play it for square dances a lot now. play one more, what I would call festival tune, because sometimes there's a different versions of a tune, and there's the authentic old source tune, but it gets to festivals and people do things to them, and they're pretty fun to play, but it's kind of hard to say where did it really come from. But all we know is who we learned it from, and the next one we're going to play is a version of Bonaparte's Retreat, right?
Retreat.
There's different Bonapartes. There's like Bonaparte crossing the Rhine, Bonaparte this. Sometimes, as a joke, we kind of call this Bonaparte crossing the Greenbrier, or maybe Bonaparte crossing Browns Creek, or something like that, because it's not exactly like any other Bonaparte. But we definitely learned this tune from our good old friend Scotty Nelson, and
He lives down in Asheville, North Carolina, and he said he heard this version from Tim O'Brien, who is quite a musician on the bluegrass and old time scene. So
who knows?
we don't know exactly where. It's just PD. Belongs to everybody.
Okay. The next tune that I'm going to play is actually an Ohio tune, and since Oberlin's in Ohio, and I spent a good time in Ohio, and I was even born in Ohio, it seemed like I should play an Ohio tune. And this was actually written by a guy in 1856 called Benjamin Hanby, and the Hanby family had a lot of involvement with the Underground Railroad, in which escaped slaves were coming up from the South, and they would be harbored by different citizens and kind of hidden away and sent on their way to safer places. And Oberlin, the town of Oberlin, where the college is, was actually one of those endpoints in the Underground Railroad. And this guy, Benjamin Hanby, that wrote this tune, wrote it while he was at Otterbein College, another small Ohio college that was also a site of Underground Railroad activity. And it's actually quite a long song, which I'm not going to sing, but the story of it was inspired by a slave that Hanby had met, who had escaped from Kentucky and was very sad because he left his sweetheart behind. So the story is about Darling Nellie Gray would be the sweetheart that he's never going to see anymore. So kind of sad, really. Darling Nellie Gray. I'm going to play one more tune in this key that jumps all the way forward in my life. This is a West Virginia tune, and I learned it from Mike Burns, and he claimed for a while that he thought he learned it from Sherman Hammonds in Pocahontas County, but before I came to do my story session, I did a little research on the version of it, and I'm pretty sure that the version that we play is much closer to Ernie Carpenter's version. Ernie Carpenter was a Braxton County fiddler, and Mike was in Braxton County for a while, and he might have learned this from Ernie Carpenter and not Sherman Hammonds, so I'll play it anyway. So this is a version of Shelvin' Rock. There's lots of Shelvin' Rocks out there. Shelvin' Rock is a rock ledge that sticks out, and apparently one of Ernie Carpenter's, I want to say not his grandfather, maybe great-grandfather, was supposedly like born under a rock ledge or something when they were hiding out for some reason from, I think from Indian raids or something. That's the story, but I'm not sure the truth of it or whatever, so this is called the Shelvin' Rock. So that was from Braxton County, I think, and Braxton County is actually the first place in West Virginia that I ever lived, so I'm not a native West Virginian, but I've been here for just about all of my adult life, and Braxton County was the start of it, and that was pretty brief, and then Mike and I were married and we moved to Pocahontas County, or no, I'm sorry, we moved to Greenbrier County. We lived in Greenbrier County a year, but neither of us really liked our jobs there. So what actually brought us to Pocahontas County, we'd been coming to Pocahontas County for Pioneer Days, music contests. Mike had emceed that, and the old Huntersville Festival back in the day. But, and we had come, I think, camping to Watoga, that sort of thing. So we were familiar with Pocahontas County, and I can't really say that the music brought us here. It was really jobs that brought us here, but indirectly, because Mike came up to Pocahontas County to look into an artist in residence position. He thought they might hire a musician, but they didn't. But in the meantime, somebody told him that the forestry position at the high school was open, and he took that. And we were both doing some crazy commuting for a while, but by July of that year, that was in January, by July of that year, there was a science position open at Greenbank Middle School, and they offered it to me. So we came here for jobs, believe it or not. Not a lot of people come to Pocahontas County for jobs, but we did. Well, I wanted to say a little bit about women in banjos, because when I first started playing banjo, there were I didn't know any women that played banjo. This is back in the 70s, and so it was a long time before I actually saw another woman playing the banjo. And the first woman that I saw playing the banjo was Suzanne Thomas, who played with the Hot Mud Family, which was a pretty well-known Ohio band at the time. And they did a lot of singing and a lot of old-time, kind of old-time / bluegrass, but more old-time. And we went from Oberlin College, we went to a square dance up in Cleveland, and the Hot Mud Family was playing for the square dance. And I'm thinking, wow, a woman banjo player. But it really didn't help me much as far as a role model, because Suzanne is an awesome, awesome musician, multi-instrumentalist, but there she was in her green lame pants with her cigarette stuck in the peg head of the banjo, and there I was in my blue jeans, and I just thought, well, okay, there's a woman banjo player. Nowadays, there's quite a few of them, and one noted woman banjo player, which is where I learned the next tune that I'm going to play, is Allison DeGroot. Now, I don't really personally know Allison. She's an awesome banjoist that plays with Bruce Molsky's band, and one nice outcome of the pandemic is that a lot of opportunities that used to only happen in person went virtual, and that made them more accessible to people that live in places like Pocahontas County, for example. So the Handmade Music School out of Floyd, Virginia, was doing some workshops virtually, and they got Allison DeGroot to do this banjo workshop, and the topic of the banjo workshop was the banjo tunes of Maggie Hammons. Now, I saw that, and I was like, what? Wait, what? Maggie Hammons plays the banjo? Or played the banjo? Because I had all my years in Pocahontas County, all my years hearing about the Hammons family this, the Hammons family that, Hammons tunes. I had never once heard that Maggie had ever played the banjo. Well, lo and behold, according to Allison, there were these field recordings, and she encouraged everybody in the workshop to go check them out, which I did. And on the field recordings, of course, there's a lot of ballad singing, which is what Maggie is famous for. But there's also, on those field recordings, probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 banjo tunes that she did. And what Allison did in her workshop was translate those tunes into clawhammer style, because Maggie Hammons played an old style of two-finger picking. So what she did was try to emulate the sound that she made, but using the clawhammer style. And so I'm going to play one of Maggie's tunes, and it's called Jack of Diamonds, not to be confused with the many other Jack of Diamonds tunes out there, but this is the one that Maggie played. she doesn't sing much on the tune, but she does like sing one little verse, and it's something like, the old jack of diamonds and the table's in place. I'll play the high card and you play the ace. Something like that. So, but then all of her other ballads, of course, are just only unaccompanied singing. So I thought that was pretty unique. And it's in a pretty strange tuning. You can hear not the usual banjo tuning. And this tuning is called Last Chance Tuning. Well, then I got to thinking, well, Last Chance Tuning, I should learn to play the tune Last Chance, because it's named after that tune. So I'll play that one, since it's the only other tune I know in this tuning. Better check it, though. Okay, so this is Last Chance. Comes from a Virginia musician, Hobart Smith. Even though I mainly play the banjo, fiddle is part of my story too, because back in 4th, 5th grade, when I was trying to play in that little orchestra, I did learn some finger positions, which I have totally forgotten, and how to hold a bow, which I've totally forgotten, but there was that. And I did have gifted to me that very nice fiddle that someone decided to appropriate. So back during the pandemic, another good thing that happened to me was that I started trying to play fiddle again. So I needed a fiddle. So Mike had quite a few of them.
So who gifted you that fiddle?
You did. And so I asked him to give me a fiddle. I said, you can keep that 1952 Roth, but I want you to give me the fiddle. And I think I said I don't want a piece of crap either, because I knew there were some of those around. And he actually gave me not one but 2 fiddles, and I like them both, so it's all good, really. So when I finally took that fiddle out of the closet back in the Oberlin days, we would have these square dances, and everybody wanted to dance, but you had to have musicians to play for the dance, so they weren't too picky about the fiddlers. And I'm going to play one that we played for square dances back in the day. It's a funny thing, because the tune is called Sugar in My Coffee, Oh. And if you Google that or look it up on YouTube, you will get a tune that is nothing like this tune. And I never heard anybody play this tune until during the pandemic. I was on a Zoom jam, and my friend Pete Vigor played this tune, and it was this version. And I said, Pete, where did you where did that tune come from? And he goes, oh, I don't know. It was just a tune that was around in the 70s. So who knows? So this is a version of Sugar in My Coffee O. Coffee O. Give me a second here. Sugar in my coffee, oh. So I dug the fiddle out of the closet, or got the new fiddle from Mike, and I decided that I really wanted to start learning again. And so the next tune I'm going to play is a traditional old-time tune, Sourwood Mountain. And I learned this tune from Emily Shadd, who's, I think, currently from Asheville, but also from New York. And she is quite the student of the northwest corner of North Carolina fiddlers, so I'm sure that her influence came from that North Carolina area, Asheville area. Sourwood Mountain. So this tune that I'm going to play now comes from Tommy Jarrell, also from that Round Peak area of North Carolina. And I have to say that area has been a big influence on my playing both banjo and now trying to learn fiddle. And in fact, one of the other virtual workshops that I did was one that Riley Bogus did. Riley Bogus is a well-known old-time banjo player, and he did one that was featuring the Round Peak style of banjo playing, and I thought, well, I'm going to check this out because I've always been attracted to Round Peak music, so I thought, well, I'll check this out. And he's showing these different licks, like the Galax lick and this and that, and I'm thinking, those are all the things that I do when I play banjo, so it kind of reaffirmed to me that I really did play a little more of that Round Peak style. So Tommy Jarrell was a fiddler from that area who sort of became noticed later in the kind of revival time. And Brad Leftwich and David Winston, Lisa Ornstein, my Oberlin College classmates, whatever, really, really liked Tommy Jarrell's playing. And they made many, many visits down there, and through their visits down there, they brought him to Oberlin to do a folk music club concert there. So that I got to meet him and play music with him in that context, and that was super fun. And so I've always liked his playing. It's a little bit scratchy, but that's okay with me because I'm sure that I play pretty scratchy. So I'm going to play a tune that came from Tommy Jarrell. I'm not going to play it like Tommy Jarrell, although I always say to Mike, it sounds just like Tommy Jarrell, doesn't it? And he tells me, oh yeah. But I probably learned this from Brad Leftwich, but he would have learned it from Tommy Jarrell, and it's been a long time. So, you know, the folk process happened, so I'm not going to say that it's exactly what I learned from either source. So anyway, called Chilly Winds, kind of a haunting tune.